Alright, well let's start with our Hello World application. As I recommended to you, I suggest NetBeans for Java programming. It's my personal favorite. Eclipse is also very good. A lot of people do like Eclipse. I'm just partial to NetBeans myself. I think it does an excellent job, especially when you're doing graphical user interfaces. It has a really easy to use kind of drag and drop, create your own Windows sort of interface. But it also handles a lot of the stuff for you, and it's great for getting started. So I'm just going to go here and close out the other project I was working on. We go to File, New Project, Java application. We're going to hit Next. Project name will be Hello World. I'm going to go ahead and set it as the main project and create the main class, so it'll automatically do that for us, so we don't have to worry about that file naming. And it's going to go ahead and create our folder for the project and our package, as well as our first code, source code file here, and it automatically is going to put in our main method. And so all we really have to do to create a Hello World application is type here system.out. You can see that's called a print stream. We'll learn about streams in later tutorials. And then dot println, which stands for print line, and then within parentheses we put the string we want it to print, which in this case is Hello World with an exclamation point. NetBeans does a good job of automatically closing stuff out for you to make your life a little easier. So make sure all the brackets, parentheses, and all that's closed out. And as is common with a lot of programming languages, although we're going to see that Python's a little different, you end your lines of code with a semicolon. And we're getting no red lines, no errors, and we go ahead and click either save, or in the newer versions of NetBeans, when you click save, it automatically builds after you build it the first time. So we're just going to go ahead and build it the first time by clicking that hammer up there, and it says build successful, and we go ahead and click run, and it's going to run down here, Hello World, and everything worked just fine. You can also go into the folder where you have it saved under, which in our case is right here, and you'll see that NetBeans automatically puts out all these files here. Your jar file, which is the one you can double click to run, is going to be under the dist folder, and that's just helloworld.jar. And a jar is actually just a zip file, but for Java it executes the class files that are built into it, as you can see. So you can go to whatever folder you have it saved as, go into dist, double click helloworld.jar, and it'll run the program in a DOS or bash shell for you. Or you can just do it right here in NetBeans by clicking the green arrow, and it runs right down there. So that's your basic Hello World app, where everybody starts with every programming language. And next we're going to get into using some variables, some methods, making things a little bit more complicated, and giving you a little bit more control and power over the code, and kind of letting you do your own thing with it. Alright, now let's move on to creating another application, but we're going to do work a bit more with variables and creating methods for that application, which will really open up the possibilities of programming for you, and let you really kind of get your hands dirty with this, because you can take it in any direction you want. Alright, welcome back. Let's delve a little deeper into Java here.
Today we're just going to work with a few types of variables and declaring methods and using them in your programs. Essentially it's not going to be any more useful than the Hello World application, but it's gonna open the door to creating more complicated programs and just getting the hang of programming in general. So we're going to start with some variables. Variable is just like what it is in math. It's some number or unknown or known quantity. There's all sorts of them, many different kinds, of all various shapes and sizes. We're going to work with some of the more basic and more commonly used ones today. We'll get into some more complicated ones in Java later. But most of these are common to almost all programming languages. The first one we're going to work with is an integer, and that's a whole number. That's important. You can't use decimals with integers. Positive or negative, anywhere from like negative 63,000 to 63,000, including 0. I'm not sure about the 63,000. It's something like that. It's essentially limited to the number of numbers that can be contained within 1 byte of information. And if it's positive or negative, that means the first bit in that byte is signed, which means you really only have 2 to the 7th possible combinations. So if you do 2 to the 7th, that's how many positive and net. Divide that by 2, I suppose. No. 2 to the 7th is how many you can go up to, which is a big number. So integers work well for most purposes. So to declare an integer, in Java and most programming languages, you start by the type of variable you want, and in our case we're using an integer. In most programming languages it's represented by int. After you declare the type, you have to name it. And this is important. This is how you're going to reference this variable in your code, and keep track of it and use it, etc. So for our program here, let's just call it x. Now there's a few things you can do at this point. You can just be done with it and hit semicolon, and it's undeclared, we call that, so x doesn't really have a value right now. The computer will probably assign it a value, like a null value, but right now it really doesn't have a value, which is not really good for us, because, well, the whole point of showing you this is to show you what you can do with it. So let's give it a value of 5. And again, to assign a value to an integer, you do it just like that. Int, whatever you want to call it, equals, and then an integer. So that's the integer. Next one we're going to look at is the character, or char, some people call it. I just call it a character. And that's basically a single letter, number, etc. You'll see what I mean in a minute. For that one, char, char is where that comes from, or character. And we can't call it the same thing as the first one, because then it'll, every variable has to have a unique name. So we'll call this one 5. And again, you can close it off right there, and that can be that. Or you can assign it a value. Now when you're using characters in Java, we use the single quotes blocks for characters, and we'll assign it 5, close it out. Now you can't do this, because in Java 5 is an integer, whereas this here is a graphical representation of that. It's how we view the number. Java might let you get, if you assign 5 to it, you're probably going to see that it's not going to be the number 5. If we did this, it's very likely that it's not going to be 5, it'll be the 5th character in the ANSI or ASCII character set.